So let's assign roles for the on-camera workshop, which will be on the 14th. Mike, do you still want to be the VP of Annuity Processing and Sales? Sure. Okay. All right, Head of Annuity Processing? Ricky, yes. Project Manager, Online Entry Project. We can come back to it. All right, we'll come back to it. Head of Annuity Sales? Come back to that one too. VP of Information Technology? All right. Who wants to do the Menard graph scenario? All right, Marilyn. Anyone else want to do that? I mean, it's sometimes even a better exercise with two people because they're like, yes, all right, Jose. All right. Who would like to do an interview? Who would like to be interviewed? Anyone want? Okay. Well, we can't have any interviewers if we don't have any interviewees. Guess we can come back to that one. Who wants to be the BP chairman? If we have more than one person, we can rock, paper, scissors. Daniel, fantastic. Reporter for the BP press conference? David, excellent. Anyone else want to be the reporter? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the annuity processing. So if you don't sign up for the annuity processing, you pretty much have to do an interview or an interviewee.
Project manager for the online.
Project manager, Nick. Okay. Head of annuity sales. VP of information technology. All right, Saeed. All right, we still have the head of annuity sales. This is good when you have a sales background, even if you don't. Sell more stuff. Don't worry about processing. Lavanya? No, that's not a hand. All right, so can someone volunteer for head of annuity sales? Anyone kids are talking about yeah. All right. Well, who wants to do an interview? Okay, Lavanya wants to be an interviewee. Lavanya.
Interviewer.
You want to be interviewer? Okay. So who wants to be an interviewee? All right. Renew. All right. Renew. And Lay, you want to be an interviewee? Okay, fantastic. Lay. All right, and Lavanya. Let's put Lavanya with Renew. And so you'll read the description, prepare some questions. Lavanya, you'll talk to her, ask her what she wants to be interviewed about, read the questions she prepares, research a little bit, maybe think of one little curveball to throw her. Another interviewer. Evan,
Are we going to be critiqued at all on our interviewing skills? It's
not
something I do as part of my job, and I was hoping it would be.
Sure, we can give you tips on your interview skills. We'll look mostly at the interviewee.
I kind of figured.
We'll look at, we could, but yeah, all right. So, but we'll make a special effort. You and Lay. All right. So you're going to be an interviewer, Evan? With Lay? Okay, so work with Lay and figure out the questions. All right, so I think that leaves Jim, head of annuity sales. There's exciting. We had a lot of interest in that one, Jim, but I think I'm going to give it to you because you are the most qualified. So we're on page 8. Next week you're going to play the head of annuity sales. Not next week, 2 weeks from tonight. You're going to play the head of annuity sales for the on-camera workshop. Okay, so who does not have a role? Michelle does not have a role? Is that it? Everyone else has a role?
I won't be able to make that class. Same here. I was going to talk to you.
Okay, fine. All All right, who will be here but does not have a role? Just Michelle, I guess? Okay. All right. Thinks we're good. Maybe Michelle can be an extra reporter to ask some tough questions. Yeah, well, I'll put her down for that. Oh, wait, we already have 3. I guess we can have 4 reporters, whatever. Michelle. Okay, one other detail with that for the annuity processing scenario. Mike, do you have a laptop you can easily bring? Okay, so bring your laptop, and also I'll try to connect with you on Skype sometime between now and then, just so that doesn't become a technical glitch. I'll figure that out during the break or something else. Ricky or Nick, do you have a laptop you could easily bring? Ricky? Okay, Ricky, laptop. And same thing to you, I'll try to connect with you on Skype so we get that out of the way. And Jim or Saeed, do either of you have a laptop that's easy to bring to you? Saeed? Okay. So Saeed, laptop. All right, so Saeed, Ricky, and Mike, you'll bring your laptops. You make sure your Skype account is up to date, and we'll try to connect before class, sometime between now and then. All right, so that's that. Let's begin with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, one of my favorite topics to teach in this class, and I've also found it to be one of the most valuable. I find I use these emotional intelligence techniques all the time in my large-scale communication interactions, all the time in my personal relationships. I'm constantly thinking about how I'm getting upset emotionally and how that's negatively affecting my communication skills, or if I'm able to control those emotions, how it more positively affects my communication skills. So let's get some definitions. What is emotional intelligence? Let me throw this first one out. Emotional intelligence, the ability to use, identify, understand, and manage emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Sounds pretty good, right? We want to do all of those things. So let's break that definition down. So ability to identify, use, and understand, ability to identify, use, understand, and manage emotions. So, what's going on with your emotions? Are you upset? Is this the right time to have a difficult conversation with your boss? Well, maybe, maybe not. Maybe I should wait till I'm calm. Okay, I'm frustrated at the IT people because they took so long to get here and they asked annoying questions when they came. Should I tell them that right now? Or does it really matter? Maybe I should just hold off, take a breath. Because every time I call them from now on, they're going to be mad and they're going to be slow to help. So, ability to identify, use, and understand and manage these. The positive things that will happen, relieve stress. If you're going to be emotional, upset all the time, typically that's going to hurt you more than the other people who are making you mad. And communicate effectively. Hard to communicate when you're really frustrated and mad at someone. Empathize with others. What does empathize mean?
Put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, putting yourself in their shoes. So maybe my boss is under a lot of pressure right now. Maybe she's facing some deadline, and that's why she's getting all frustrated and mad at me. So if I were in her shoes, I might feel the same way. Just the process of thinking about that can help you relate better with her. All right, overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. All right, good stuff. We want to use this in our communication interactions. We want to think about how it's relevant in all levels. If you have high emotional intelligence, you're able to recognize your emotional states and the emotional states of others and engage with people in a way that draws them to you. So 2 things. Recognize your emotional state and your emotional states of others. This was developed in 1985 by some guy named Leon Payne, but more notably developed by someone called Daniel Goleman, who applied this to business settings. Has anyone heard of Daniel Goleman before? Maybe if you saw, before you saw the video that I signed you? You've heard of him before? Okay. Okay, yes. So he said, let's think about how these emotional intelligence skills can help us in a business setting. And that's what he did, which was useful for business people who looked at the bottom line, the results that this kind of stuff creates. He said, we are judging job performance here. We're not going to judge any touchy-feely creative stuff. We're going to say, what helps us with job performance? And he looked at various factors, which he grouped into 3 categories. The first, he said, does IQ help us with effective job performance? Sure, it helps a little bit. If you're really smart, you may be better at your job. But we all know people who are really smart that are not great managers or not great at their job. So he said, let's also look at job skills. Does someone who may not be as smart, may not have a high IQ like someone else, but have really good job skills, they've gone through Navy training and perfected all those skills, is that going to make them a good manager? Is that going to lead to effective job performance? Well, he found that that was more relevant than IQ. But still, he found, especially as managers moved up and got more authority, there was something else that was much more important, and was emotional intelligence. It was this ability to understand your own emotions, understand the emotions of other people, and use that to effectively communicate with them. And not just communicate because we can say we communicate effectively, but communicate so that we can say that we increase job performance. And depending on how he sliced the data, sometimes he said EQ accounts between 60 and 80% of effective job performance. Got a little complicated the way he looked at it, so it depends on what level and what sense we mean by effective job performance, but he has some data that says between 60 and 80% of effective job performance comes down to emotional intelligence skills. How can we further subdivide emotional intelligence just so we can get a better idea of this definition and how it relates to us? Well, Goleman categorized things of, categories of emotional intelligence. I think he had 5 different categories. I like to group emotional intelligence into 3 different categories. I think it's easier to assess that way. First category, I say, is self-awareness. Awareness of your emotions. What agitates you? What type of people agitate you? What type of professional situations stress you out? And how does that affect your ability to do your job or your ability to build relationships? Second category, emotional management. So when you're mad, when you're frustrated, how can you manage that and still interact in a professional manner? Third, social management. How can you connect with other people? How can you empathize with them? How well can you understand what's going on in their emotional environment? And how does that affect your ability to build a relationship with them? So, 3 pillars of emotional intelligence that we will discuss in class: self-awareness, emotional management, and social management. I would like to do a quick exercise to put this in context and to get you all thinking about skills, attributes that past managers have had and what worked and what didn't work, and we're going to see how close that fits into emotional intelligence skills. So we'll do this quick exercise with you thinking about the best manager you've ever had and you thinking about the worst manager you've ever had. And then I would like you to think about 3 attributes that this best manager had and 3 attributes that this worst manager had. And we'll jot those down. I'm going to give you some little stickies to write those on, and we'll do an exercise where we collect all those pieces of data. But for right now, just think of the best manager you've ever had, think of the worst manager you've ever had, and write down the 3 attributes of each of those people. And you can turn to the second packet I gave you, the EQ workbook. I think on the first page it has this exercise. You can just start thinking about those, start writing those down. So keep going, but I'm going to pass out these little stickies, and you should take 6 of these little stickies and write all 6 of the adjectives down, or all 6 of the attributes down on each of one little sticky. So you'll need 6 total. So take like 6 and pass them on. So let me get you some more. Just take 6, pass on. You don't have to count out exactly. You can take a few more.
Oh, he gave us. There's only 6 in it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Take 6, pass on.
You can have it.
All right, so you should be writing 3 attributes of the best. Oh, you still need stickies?
Yeah.
All right. If you have stickies, throw them at me. You got it. Oh, 2 more. Okay. All right, so write down 3 attributes best, 3 attributes for the worst. All right. When you're done with that, I would like you to think about where those attributes fit in terms of, are they related to your manager's IQ? Were they related to your manager's job skills? Or were they related to your manager's emotional intelligence? And when you've decided that, I would like you to bring those stickies up to the front of the class and put them in the appropriate place. So your 3 stickies for the best manager, if it was related to IQ, you're going to stick it right here. If it was related to job skill, you're going to stick it here. EQ, you're going to stick it here. Same thing with worst. If it's IQ related, here. Job skill here. EQ here. Okay, so what do we see with the data? It's exactly like Goldman would have predicted it. Right, between 60 to 80% of job performance can be accounted for with emotional intelligence. So if we really, really hate someone, it's not as often that we say, well, we hate them because they're stupid or they can't do their job. What really gets us mad about them is that they're illogical, demanding, micromanager, have trust issues, dishonest. If someone's dishonest, we don't care how well they can do their job or how smart they are. No, they're dishonest, closed-minded, emotional, insecure. Indirectly called me a bitch. Okay. Bad EQ. Same thing with best manager. I could go with your best manager you've ever had. I would believe you more if you told me that it came down to intelligence or job skill. I think you might remember that person as really, really smart or just so good at their job. But at least our data doesn't show that so much. We liked them and we remembered them because they were rational, trusted me, supportive, trusting, transparent, open and support, inspiring, good listener, all right? Grants autonomy, inspiring, available, not afraid to fail, patient. So it's these emotional intelligence qualities that make us remember this person as the best manager we've ever had. And similarly, the worst manager we've ever had. So this is important to our development as we become managers and want to communicate effectively. And we want to be the manager who has all the stickies right here. When your subordinates take this class, you want them to put you right here rather than right here, right? So let's continue trying to break this down a little bit more and think of some specific things that we might have encountered and how they relate to emotional intelligence. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to go through each of the three categories: self-awareness, emotional management, social management, and pose the question, what do you have if you have good emotional intelligence, if you have good self-awareness, good social management, good emotional management? What does self-awareness mean? If you have self-awareness, you can understand emotions and effects. You understand your emotions when you're mad and how this is going to affect you. And I looked at that printout. I'm sorry about this. It didn't come out on the printout. I will double check that next time before I do the print. But sorry that on your slides on the handout it didn't come out. But we'll go through this slowly if necessary. Oh, we won't really need to. If you have self-awareness, you have congruent verbal and non-verbal. What does that mean? Daniel.
So if they tell you in a team meeting not to get upset when something doesn't go right, and yet when they're told something that they don't like, they roll their eyes and kind of huff and puff.
Okay, yeah. Good. That's a larger definition of congruent verbal, non-verbal. And I like that a lot. I'm glad you mentioned that. What I meant specifically here is when you tell someone they're doing a good job verbally, but non-verbally, it's just obvious they think you're not doing a good job. Or you tell someone, okay, that's not a big deal, we can smooth that over, but it's obvious they're just like seething inside. Okay? You don't want to be that person. You don't want to interact with that person. You don't trust them. You don't know whether or not they're mad. You don't know how to respond to them. A person who is self-aware has awareness of strengths, needs, weaknesses. So this is important. Let's go through each of those. Needs. So if you're not aware of your needs, does that mean you don't have needs? No. It just means you're not aware of your needs. So you might express them in unhealthy ways. If you're aware also of your strengths and your weaknesses, you can know how you can contribute to a team. You can know how you can help and support your subordinates. But if you're not aware of those things, sometimes you can do unhealthy things as it relates to your interpersonal interactions. You might be trying to prove that you're strong where you're actually weak. You might be upset that you're weak in an area and not want to admit that to yourself. And that could just cause you to have this frustration when you interact with people. So self-awareness is not just about understanding our emotions, but understanding how we fit in a social, professional context. Awareness of values and goals. Same question I posed with needs. If you're not aware of your values and goals, that doesn't mean you don't have values and goals. You're still going to have aspirations. You're still going to have things that you feel comfortable with and uncomfortable with. And if you're able to acknowledge when you're uncomfortable in a certain situation, you're going to be able to interact with people in a way that deals with that in a healthy, positive way. If for some reason you're in a situation that makes you uncomfortable, but you just don't have the awareness to acknowledge that and aware that it's going on, then that could cause some problems for you. And with all that understanding comes self-acceptance and confidence. You may not be strong at everything, but you can accept where you are. You can accept what you're working towards. You want to be on a team with someone who has self-acceptance and is confident about where they are. You don't want to be on a team with someone who's constantly underestimating or misestimating their own skills and abilities, and as a result is just not self-assured. So you want to be the person who understands your strengths, weaknesses, emotions, emotional effects, so you can interact with people in a more positive way. Emotional management. So, if you have skills in emotional management, what do you have? The first thing you have is rational thought. You can think rationally when you're not controlled by your emotions. And this is key. Right? This is a really big point. If you get frustrated and you do things irrationally, then that's not going to be very positive for you in the long term. And we don't really think about this on a minor scale. We might think about this on a large scale. When you say, that time I just got so mad, I just, indirectly called someone a bitch. Or I got so mad, I just did this or that. You think about those extreme scenarios. But you don't think about those little things when you just got frustrated with the IT department and you just kind of gave them attitude when they finally showed up. You're like, well, that wasn't really rational. I just was mad, so I did it. It wasn't like I panicked or scared for my life. There's so many times we get in just these small, frustrating moments and we do something that's emotional rather than rational. Rational thought. That's what we have. We have emotional management. Resiliency, I'm going to put these next few up and talk about them all as group. Resiliency, patience, flexibility. So this is the idea that if things don't go exactly your way, are you going to fly off the handle emotionally and say, I can't change course, I can't be flexible? If you get some disappointment, are you going to say, well, I'm just going to stew for the rest of the summer? I didn't get that job that I wanted, so I know that my life can't ever be perfect. It can only be kind of perfect. Or are you going to have some resiliency and say, I can bounce back from this? Some flexibility, say, I can change course even though I disagree with the way my team is doing this. And some patience, knowing that even though I didn't get that thing I wanted right now, I can manage that emotion and work in positive ways to get what I want in the future. Emotional management, resiliency, patience, flexibility, confidence. All right, we said confidence with self-awareness. I'll say confidence with emotional management as well. If you can confidently walk into a difficult situation, such as a business presentation, and know it may not go perfectly, but know that you're going to be calm and you're going to be able to be resilient and patient no matter what happens, that's going to give you a sense of confidence. Knowing that you can manage your emotions when you need to. Self-motivation. I put self-motivation under emotional management. The reason I do is because I make the argument that we all have aspirations, we all are motivated to do certain things, we all have goals. And what prevents us from accomplishing those goals, or what prevents us from trying to accomplish those goals, is that we get frustrated. Frustrated, we say, I'm not going to try anymore. Right? It didn't work out, so I'm not going to be resilient. I'm not going to be patient. I'm not going to be flexible. So it saps our motivation because we get into all these problems where frustration stops us from doing something that we found important, we found worthwhile. So I like to look at motivation as a component of emotional management. All right, and failing to manage our emotions can sap our motivation. Lastly, physical and mental health. If you're stressed out all the time, I mentioned earlier that's not going to hurt the person usually that's stressing you out, or the person that's doing the thing that's upsetting you. It's going to hurt you. Your heart's going to be beating all the time, have all this stress in your body, prick neck, whatever the case may be. If you can manage those emotions, you can avoid a lot of those problems. Okay, lastly, social management. If you have the ability to actively manage your social interactions, what do you have? First thing, empathy. We talked about empathy earlier. The ability to put yourself in someone's shoes. This helps us with so many interactions. So many of the worst managers we ever had just had no idea what we were going through. They had no idea what we were feeling and how they could help us because they lacked emotional intelligence. They lacked the ability to think from our perspective. And we can all think of examples of just how great it is when someone understands us. When someone says, yeah, I understand what you're going through, and I want to help you with that. Rather than do this, do that, or don't do this, don't do that. Empathy. Insight. So with empathy, gives us insight. If we can think about what someone's going through, we can judge their motivations. We can say, all right, my manager is probably feeling really stressed out right now, and that's why she's screaming at this person or that person or me. So I want to think about that in my response. I don't want to just think about the fact that she's screaming at me. I want to think about why and how I can be insightful about that. And then lastly, if you have social management, you have an ability to relate to people. Combine this empathy, combine this insight, and you can relate. Understand what you're going through. I can change my behavior based on your emotions. I can change my approach based on where you're standing. I can change my ability to be a subordinate of yours based on what you're going through right now. Okay, so a broad view, self-awareness, emotional management, social management. Now I'd like to look at a series of actual events that you may have encountered, that you may have thought of, and I want to think about how these events fit in with emotional intelligence and what broad category of emotional intelligence skill we can put them in. I took these EQ questions from a very long emotional intelligence test, longer than the one that you all took this weekend. And these are just various scenarios that you might have faced in your life. Let's look at each of them. Think about, is the person engaging in this behavior someone with high emotional intelligence or low emotional intelligence? And what category does it fit in? Self-awareness, emotional management, or social management? So, this person might tell you that I change my tone and behavior depending on who I am interacting with. Is that a person high EQ or low EQ? High. All right, and which of the three categories would we put this in? Social management. Okay, good. All right, so that's what I want to do to think this through. The more we have an ability to analyze this in a practical, tangible way, the more we can take this soft emotional management idea and think about it in terms of specific applications for us. So this person might tell you, I change my beliefs and values depending on who I am interacting with. Let me get one person for each. So if you want to take this one, raise your hand. I change my beliefs and values depending on who I am interacting with. Yep.
Self-awareness.
Is it low? Low? Okay. Low and self-awareness. That's what I would say. Now, some of these we could argue, some self-awareness, some emotional management, some social management, but I would say this one is self-awareness. Jim?
Could you argue that that is high EQ?
Yeah.
Because basically, like, so if you're in like a business situation and like say
like say like you're in New York and I'm from South, or like something crazy like that, it's almost easier just to stay neutral and avoid the topic altogether, rather than like you have nothing to gain from asserting yourself and your beliefs, and only things to lose. So it's like you're managing that situation and just saying like it's better for me to avoid this when you can go along with what they're saying for the sake of like this meeting, this deal, whatever it happens to be.
Great point. So, might you in that situation change your tone and behavior?
Well, you wouldn't let them know that you have different beliefs and values.
Yeah. So you change your behavior by not sharing that information, not just throwing it in their face, and changing your tone when you say, when you talk about Donald Trump, when you say, if your tone normally might be just some, fit of rage, it might be, okay, he's tapped into some anger that American people are feeling, and I can respect that. That could be true, even though you can't stand the guy.
I guess you're trying to take a read on whether they're going to be reasonable people and respect your difference in opinion, or if they're going to fly off the rails.
Yeah, well, what I would say is in that situation, I would change your tone and behavior. I would not, when you're in New York, tell people you're a Democrat, and then when you take your team down to wherever, tell them that you're a Republican. I would not change your beliefs and values to that extreme. Would you want to be on a team with someone who, depending on where they are, believes one thing versus the other? Okay. Yeah. Change tone and behavior, but you don't want to change beliefs and values. That's not someone that has high emotional intelligence, not someone that you trust. If necessary, I can be courteous to a person I dislike. Raise your hand if you want. Michelle.
Self-management.
Yeah, emotional management. Yeah, I would say emotional management, a little social management as well. And yes, Mike. Dave, sorry.
It's emotional and social management. It's low. Always be courteous to people, even if you dislike them. Not if necessary. In business, it's always necessary.
Okay.
When was there an opportunity for you to be rude to somebody and advance your objective?
Good point. Okay. So this person has high emotional intelligence, but you would also say that this person should always be nice. Maybe I should just change that question. I can be courteous to a person I dislike.
I am courteous to people I dislike.
I am courteous to people I dislike. Fair enough. Good. Good point. I avoid difficult conversations even if having those conversations is necessary and important. Ricky. Is it high or low? High. Okay. Wait. Okay. It's high in which...
In a way that you're just trying to avoid the conversation you're going to have.
Which of the three categories would you put it in?
Empathy?
Social management. Okay. All right. So Ricky says high social management. Does someone want to take the contrarian point, Jameson?
Yeah, I'd say if it's a necessary conversation, it's something that has to happen. Avoiding it is probably just going to exacerbate the situation long term. So being able to address that professionally and make the best of something that is difficult to talk about might be high.
Yeah. So the key here is necessary and important. If it's necessary, it's impeding your business somehow if you don't have it, impeding your relationship somehow. You're mad about something, and if you don't express that in a healthy way, you might express that in an unhealthy way. So this person, I would say, is low EQ. What do you think, Ricky? Converted, well.
More leaning towards his high. The reason being is just a normal, like a personal example. Today I had to fire 2 people. I'm just trying to avoid it the whole day until like really close to 5 and just like still, dragging my feet to do that. So it's kind of like I'm emotionally not ready to face them.
Okay, so did you need to fire them in the morning? Or because it's okay if you wait till fire them at night?
I drag my feet, honestly. I could have done it.
Okay, so it would have been better if you'd done it in the morning.
I think so. I think emotionally it was better in the morning versus thinking on it all day and then doing it the other day.
Okay, all right. So I feel like you just told me that it was important that you do it in the morning, and it would have been better from a business standpoint, and it's a bad thing that you waited. Okay. Are you with me there then? All right. I avoid difficult conversations, even if they're necessary and important. We're going to call that a low EQ person. Kind of like you were a little bit today. I'm sure you're not low EQ all the time, but this is something you should have had in the morning and would have been better if you'd had in the morning because it was necessary. All right. So we'll move on, and we can come back to that when it's necessary. When I become occupied with a negative thought, I cannot concentrate on anything else until it is resolved. Mike.
Say low emotional management.
Yes, that's what I would say. Any other thoughts on that? What's that?
That one is home.
What?
That one gets home.
It's home. Okay. Yeah, when I come involved with a negative thought, I can't concentrate on anything else until it's resolved. All right, so we're going to have things that frustrate us, and if we let that occupy all our space and our emotional capacity, we let that impede our other relationships, our other work we have to do, then that's going to hurt us. And we want to think about a way to manage that emotion. When things get bad, I like to look at the bright side. Jose?
I think it's high.
Okay.
Maybe emotional as well.
Yeah, that's what I would say. So I would say this is a high EQ person, looking at the bright side. Now, to be honest with you, this type of person always used to annoy me. The person who would always say, well, at least the car's kind of, only partly on fire. Or at least, we've only been lost a few hours. Or at least we'll get back, that sort of thing. I felt sometimes that I wanted to be mad. Help me out, Saeed. What was the error in my thinking?
Well, I had a scenario. We have a scenario at work where we have, when we do have big problems, right? So we have a guy that's always like, no, it wasn't that bad. And it's not a good thing. It's like, no, it was terrible. We need to figure out a solution for this and not have it happen again. He's always looking at the bright side. And so it's actually a really terrible thing. That's the reason why he hasn't been promoted to be a manager, because he doesn't know how, when things are bad, to realize that they're bad and then deal with them. He's always looking to the bright side. So, I know it's good, to be positive when things are bad, but sometimes you need to just face the bad and not be positive about it, and be positive that maybe you can make it better later.
Yeah, well, let's look at that particular person. So might that person be able to say, all right, this is tough, and we absolutely need to change it right now. But, this can be positive. We will learn from this experience. We will deliver a better service once we make this change. In fact, I'm glad this came up. I wish it hadn't come up while we were in the middle of this other stuff, but, that will teach us to manage things. Could that guy be that person instead?
After it's resolved, yeah. But not when the problem is going on.
Okay.
Once you've resolved the problem, then you say, well, looking back at that, the bright side was that at least we discovered the problem before it could have gotten worse.
Okay, all right, let's get some other thoughts here. Shruti.
So why would this be under emotional management? Thinking that people like that, they don't seem to have rational thought then if they're constantly, looking for positivity everywhere. And sometimes things are bad, you have to just rationally accept that, so I would argue that it might be low EQ because they're not exactly employing rational thought.
Okay, Evan?
So finding good things in things doesn't mean you're ignoring the bad as well. I'm kind of this guy too, but I totally acknowledge the reality of the situation. Yeah, it sucks, but on the bright side, we have this going on. Doesn't mean you can ignore the situation. Doesn't mean you can't act. If you're using bright side as an excuse for inaction, that's a bad thing. That's the way. Or if you're using it to try to make yourself feel better because you can't handle the reality of the situation, that's bad. But there's nothing wrong with finding something positive to sort of get people going. Because if something's really bad, oftentimes people will just stop and not do anything. So they're frozen. my opinion, is worse. But still, that person who's frozen, and the person who says, "Oh, this is okay," the dog in the room that's on fire that says this is fine. Like those are both equally bad because neither of them are doing anything to acknowledge or resolve the situation. But they're not mutually exclusive.
Right. I like the way you said that. Using, the fact that by calling it a bright side as an excuse for inaction, that's bad. But just because you're looking on the bright side doesn't mean you say, this is bad and we need to fix it right now. Dave.
Likewise, people rarely make good decisions during panic. So saying that, if everything's bad, even if something's going wrong, acknowledging that it's wrong, figuring out what parts of it are good or how it could be better, or how, hey, once we fix this problem, this will solve, these other three things, and this will be great. Glad this broke now. You have to be somewhat optimistic in order to get people to move along and engage. People only fight fires for so long before they get burnt out and move on.
Yeah, great points. I like it. Daniel.
I would say, looking at the bright side in and of itself is good, but if it comes at the expense of people around you, then it goes from high to low. So, like in a situation where, say, you mentioned, the situation's going bad, you're saying, "Oh, it's not that bad. At least we salvaged this much out of everything." Then the impact of that, the resulting outcome, everyone around you being basically pissed off, then it's a low EQ move.
Yeah.
But if the outcome is, all right, well, it's not so bad. We can work through this, and so the outcome of whatever you said is uplifting or is in favor of those around you, then I would argue that looking at the bright side could be high.
Yeah. A person with high EQ, it doesn't mean they're nice all the time. It doesn't mean they're in a good mood all the time. It doesn't mean they're always saying everything's perfect. It just means they're able to find ways to be flexible and resilient even when things are bad. And Dave made a good point. People rarely make good decisions when they're panicked. So if you can think about, all right, how this is not terrible, this is not necessarily reason to panic, will put me in a better position to make a good decision. I've gone through a number of career transitions in my career. I mentioned a little bit about my story in the first class. I was doing acting years and years ago, and then I went to business school and was doing finance, and then I started my communications consulting business, and I do things like this. Now, if those first two careers didn't work out the way I wanted them to, and unfortunately they decided they liked Brad Pitt better than me. I don't know why, but my acting career didn't work out, and then finance didn't work out the way I'd planned either. If I just stewed and said, man, this is what I want, this is my dream, there's never going to be anything that's going to make me happy besides that, then I feel that really would have hurt my development. And the truth is, I did spend time in each of those thinking about this really sucks and this is really bad. But those were not times that helped me move forward. The times that helped me move forward where I thought, how can I use this as leverage? How can I create something positive? Or Nick.
Yeah, I was just going to say to your point, in this scenario, I think people who are leaders generally good leaders will have these traits, but kind of wallowing and acknowledging a bad situation doesn't do anything to fix it, like you said, doesn't help you move on. So you need someone who can provide the way out or how you spin a negative situation.
Great, fantastic. Let's move on. I'm good at expressing my emotions and telling people how I feel. Ready? Okay, which category? Okay, I would say high EQ, and I would probably say self-awareness, understanding your emotions, and expressing it. It could be a little bit social management as well, how you express. Maybe if you're angry, how you express that in a socially acceptable way. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think this could fall either or. For example, you could be at home in the mirror and say everything you want to say that day, or plan out what you're going to say it how you want to say it. But when you get into that social situation, where you have your boss or someone looking,
Uh-huh.
kind of crumble.
Uh-huh.
I think this could be self-aware, but I think it's also when you factor in other people, I think it becomes a high social.
Great point. Great point. So you have a way you feel, you're self-aware of it, but when you get on the ground and try to have that conversation, it crumbles. So you need to think about how you can manage your emotions when you're having that interaction, and think about how you can say things in a socially acceptable way. I've had a lot of practice in my career saying difficult things in a socially acceptable way. I did sales for a while. I had to be blunt sometimes. It managed people who were not used to being managed, so I thought about ways to honestly say important things to them. And, I mentioned last time that I dislike it when people tell me something that's not true. I dislike it when people lie to me. And I've always thought about how can I make what I say absolutely true and say it in a way that I'm not going to crumble when I start looking them in the eye and try to say that. So that is a great point, Nick. Thank you. Any other questions about that? Let's move on. If I'm angry at someone, I need to immediately tell them how I feel. Lavanya. I'd say low. And I put these two together because I feel like this is positive. This is not necessarily positive. The second one, if I'm angry, I need to immediately tell them. Well, maybe you're not ready to have that conversation. Maybe you haven't thought through what they're going through. Maybe you haven't thought through the best way to approach it. And if you just have to frustrate, you have to express that frustration right away, then you could be hurting yourself. I say things that I regret.
Low self-awareness.
Yeah, low. I would definitely say low. I would lean away from self-awareness on this one. I would put it in a different category. Does anyone want to guess what I'm thinking? Emotional. I would call it emotional management. So this is the idea where we are frustrated and we just say something without being able to manage that emotion, without being able to take a breath and say, maybe I shouldn't say that right now. I often think about the ethical implications of my actions. Mike.
High self-awareness.
I would say high. I wouldn't say self-awareness so much for this one. I would say another one. I could be open to the argument of self-awareness, but I think there's a valuable takeaway on this one for social management. All right, ethical implications gets us thinking about how what we do will affect other people. And when we make a practice of stopping to think about that, we are able to naturally put ourselves in their shoes and think about ways we could interact with them that will draw us to them, or draw them to us. I like to keep trying at worthwhile things, even if I get frustrated at first. I could argue self-awareness. I could see another case. Shruti? I would say high and emotional management. Because we get frustrated. Ooh, I got a splinter. Now I'm going to give up my hobby of doing this just because I got one splinter. All right, that's an emotional reaction, getting that piece of wood in your finger. If you're able to get past that and manage that emotion, you keep trying worthwhile things. My friends and family members sometimes make offhand remarks that I find intensely annoying. Anyone? Ricky? Okay. Tell me why this person is a high EQ person. Friends and family sometimes make offhand remarks that I find intensely annoying. You think that's a high EQ person?
Sorry, low.
Okay, all right, sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry, you're looking at me like, oh my god, man. Sorry. Jamison?
So finding something intensely annoying makes you low. I mean, in this case, are we assuming the person doesn't say anything back and just kind of
Yeah, as long as they
being able to be calm and collected and not respond or have some sort of witty retort to someone's ignorant comment would make you high EQ,
Okay, so not responding, that's another thing. And I think that's great. Let me just take a breath, not talk to them now. Understand where they're coming from. They're just looking at me like I'm 10 years old, like they have for the last 30 years. That is a high EQ person. But let's just talk about this. Someone makes an offhand remark, and you get intensely annoyed by that. 80% of your day is that?
I can understand. Like, you can get intensely annoyed by comments, and I think that's oftentimes more a reflection of the comments. Well, it's as much a reflection of the comment as a personality.
All right. Well, how much control do you have over the comments that your friends and family make?
Very low. I'm assuming you're not responding to the
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Not responding is an important thing, but is there a way when you go on family vacations where you could not sit and stew and be intensely annoyed by using some of the skills we've talked about so far? Are just all your family vacations from this point forward, you're just doomed to being intensely annoyed? Could you maybe say, well, I understand, Mom's, her memory's not great, so maybe she's just saying that because she's remembering that time I wet my pants in elementary school. So I'm not going to get annoyed by that. I think you can make the decision to do that. All right, does someone want to help me out here? Nick.
I would say it's low emotional management. And I think, to your point, it's you can choose to let offhand remarks intensely annoy you, or write them off as expected, and it's inevitable, and then choose to be in a not intensely annoyed by it, which would be the opposite of high emotional management.
That's the argument I would make. I'm open to discussing, but that is the argument that I would make. What, high. Wait. Well, you're talking about the next step, and I'm going to argue on the next step. The next step is you don't respond. We agree on that. But I want to stay on just you don't have to sit and be intensely annoyed. You can think about, well, that's just her perspective or his perspective, or she's just mad about her divorce. That's why she's asking me why I'm not married. I can empathize with what she's feeling and why she's saying that. Yes, and we'll do some exercises later where we think about what are we going to react to and what are we not going to react to. So what situations do we have to be careful about walking into? Where is our chance of going to emotional hijack high? Great point. All right, let's keep moving. I can tell when someone I'm talking to gets nervous, and I do my best to make them feel relaxed. Love it. High social management. I've noticed that I have compulsive habits, like biting nails or overeating, but I don't know why I have them, and I cannot seem to stop them. I don't know why I have them, and I cannot seem to stop them.
Low self-awareness.
Yeah, you don't want these habits. You're like, why do I shake when I walk into this boardroom? I don't know why that happens. This boardroom where everyone yells at me. I want to understand what's going on, why I have that nervous habit, and how I can deal with that in a healthy way. I'm aware of which types of professional and social situations make me feel uncomfortable. So this is a high EQ person, and this is this awareness that Vishali was talking about that we're going to get to in a minute. Think about what situations are dangerous for us that we need to prepare ourselves for a possible emotional hijack. I insist on doing things my way. Renew. I would say low social management. I would agree with that. I know there's some nuances we can get into, the people who are real go-getters and get things done, but we could have a long discussion about how you need to be careful about that. And if you can't do things your way all the time, you need to show some flexibility and resilience. I try to ignore negative feelings. Same thing we talked about, why your hand's shaking when you always walk into the boardroom. I would say this is a low EQ, low self-awareness. If you ignore negative feelings, that doesn't mean they go away. It just means you deal with them in an unhealthy way. I think people have selfish or bad intentions. I think people usually have selfish or bad intentions. All right, who said something? I heard something. Truth. Yeah, I would agree with that. But do people usually have selfish or bad intentions? I would argue not nearly as much as we think they do. They're just going through a rough day. Their boss just yelled at them. That's why they're yelling at us. And it's not that they're a bad person. I mean, I may not like their management style, but there's something going on that I could potentially empathize with that would help me relate to that person more effectively. Okay, let's skip that one. I'm just going to move on to the next section. I practice activities that help me understand my feelings, such as keeping a diary, talking with friends. High, I'd say self-awareness. I find it hard to be patient. I would say low and emotional management. Okay, so the number one thing that Daniel Goleman called the enemy of high emotional intelligence was what he called the emotional hijack. This is none other than the panic situation we sometimes get into, the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. We walk into a boardroom, we start giving a presentation, someone asks us a really annoying question, we just freeze. And we lose rational thought in that moment. We lose our ability to consider multiple variables. We sometimes think of that person who's asking an annoying question as a physical threat to our life, our well-being. We go into this adrenaline response where we're prepared for a life or death confrontation. And what happens is we're preparing for that, and we're less prepared to deal with social and professional situations in a civilized environment. So this fight, flight, or freeze reaction that happens, I want to ask you a question. When is this a good thing, and when might this be a bad thing? Shruti. Yeah, of course. Of course, when the car is coming at you, yeah, do not try to think about what I taught you in this class. Just jump out of the way. When your life is in danger, this is a good thing. This is a very good thing. Daniel?
Let's say you're part of leadership team, someone really high up, and then someone from the crowd asks you a question about why are you choosing to do something this way. And so you could get emotionally hijacked, but you have to stand and fight and say the leadership team has decided to do X, Y, and Z. Moving forward because of this, you understand that it may not be the best, it may not be what you want basically, but we're moving forward with this.
Yes, so your life is in danger. This is a good thing. You get asked an annoying question. This is a bad thing. And I would make the point that an emotional hijack is only good when your life is in danger. All right, that adrenaline running through your body, that lack of ability to consider multiple variables, that panic feeling is not something that is ever going to work for you when you're trying to conduct yourself in an effective communication, professional, social type of environment. I have heard the argument that just a little bit of stress keeps you on edge. We could debate that, but for the most part, this fight, flight, or freeze is not something we want to have controlling our professional lives. It's good, when it's a bad. So adrenaline goes through our body, oxygen utilized for response. Sometimes it's hard to talk because the oxygen is trying to prepare our muscles. Something we'll talk about, the amygdala. Amygdala compromises our working memory. And the duration of this emotional hijack varies. I've got a graphic where we can think about this emotional hijack works physiologically. Suppose you are this hiker. You're walking along, enjoying a nice fall day, enjoying a nice spring day, and all of a sudden you see a snake. And you scream. Ah! So what happens inside your brain? You see the snake. That information is transferred to something called the visual thalamus, where your mind says, oh, that's a snake. That information is then passed on to the cerebral cortex, where you process, oh, a snake. The best thing for me to do in this situation is to carefully step back, slowly walk away. You transfer that information to something called your amygdala, which is a processing center, which transfers that information down your spine, which says slowly walk back. Now, if any of you have a healthcare background, you may have realized this is a simplified diagram that Daniel Goleman presented us with, but it has stood up to scrutiny about the big picture of what happens. There is also something that happens at the same time when you see this snake. You see this little dotted line? What's going on there? From the visual thalamus to the amygdala.
Bypassing where you process your next rational action and go straight to responding erratically.
Exactly. It's bypassing the rational part of your brain, the cerebral part of your brain. Have you ever heard someone say that you're very cerebral? You think things through carefully. Cerebral is the thinking part of our brain, where we make those rational decisions. And it takes a split second longer to go through the cerebral part of our brain than it does to go straight to the amygdala and jump out of the way when the car is coming at us. But when we do that, we're losing rational thought. And we don't want to lose rational thought unless our life is literally in danger. Maybe sometimes when our life is in danger, we still want to have rational thought. Yeah. Okay. So this emotional hijack, it can last a while. Unless we recognize a threat as something that is not threatening our life, then we can stay in that panicked situation indefinitely. Our compromised working memory, I mentioned this earlier. This Institute for Health and Human Potential has done some research on it, and they've concluded that your compromised working memory, which means that it's harder for you to process multiple variables because you're so focused on the one thing that is posing a threat to your life. It's hard for you to say, oh, well, that thing relates to this, which if I just call these people, they'll answer this question and get it resolved. It's hard for you to make that second and third connection when you're in this emotional hijack situation. And that sometimes can last up to 18 minutes after the interaction. Has anyone had the experience where maybe you're in a job interview or you ask a tough question during a presentation and you say you don't know the answer, and then you walk out, you're getting in your car, oh man, I knew the answer to that. I should have just said this. Compromised working memory may last 18 minutes. Physical toxicity, this adrenaline that runs through your body lasts 3 to 4 hours. So at the end of the day, you're like, man, I need a drink. I need to just go and relax and unwind because I'm like so stressed out from that interaction, even though it happened 3 or 4 hours ago. Emotional distress from this situation could last forever. If you have a bad experience with the people in the copy room and they just send you into an emotional hijack, you might, for the next 20 years while you're working on that company, never want to go down and talk to them again. And I guarantee you that's not going to upset the people in the copy room. It's only going to hurt you. All right. So, how do we improve our emotional intelligence? How do we avoid emotional hijack? How do we get better self-awareness? How do we get better emotional management? Well, it comes down to analysis, exactly what we're doing now, thinking about how real-life situations can apply to the stuff we're learning, what sort of techniques we can use to engage in better social management, better emotional management, how we can build our self-awareness, and practice, which is what we'll do next week. We'll create some difficult question scenarios, difficult conversation scenarios, and think about how we can use some of these techniques. All right, what we're doing today is the analysis, and I'm going to show you a few techniques. First technique I want to show you, how we can avoid emotional hijack. And I noticed on the printout, too, that this one didn't come out as much. So Maybe you want to write this down because I made this up myself. This is mine. And it didn't even come out on the printout. The triple B method for stopping an emotional hijack. 1, break the pattern. 2, buy time. 3, build context. So break the pattern, and we've got this adrenaline going through our body. We've got our heart beating to prepare us for this life or death. How can we stop that? Well, we can breathe. You heard that a lot. It's not pointless advice. Breathing slows down your heart rate, slows down that adrenaline response. It actually works. It may not feel like it works because you're really stressed out, but at least you're not completely panicked. Second thing we can do, buy time. Let's not make decisions in that 18 minutes where a compromised working memory is occurring. Let's hold off. Let's say let's revisit this in 19 minutes. Or let me think about that question. I'll get back to you at the end of this slide. Or, we're coming up to that issue. Let me get to the next topic, and then we'll talk about that. Ask for time, take time, avoid commitments, and build context. What I mean by this is think about, is my life really in danger? If it is, then I better be in an emotional panic situation, and I better get out of the way. If it's not, I need to think about what's the true context here. Is this a threat? No, it's not. Well, it's a threat, but it's a threat socially, it's a threat professionally. It's not something that I need an emotional hijack to help me out with. Ask questions. Engage that cerebral cortex. What's going on here? Does this person really want to get me fired, or are they just trying to clarify? I think they're trying to clarify. Count backwards from 100 by 3. It just takes just a tiny bit of rational thought to get you more into your cerebral cortex. 100, 97, 94, 91, 88. Okay. So you can't do it automatically. You have to slow down. Let me do that for just 10 seconds before I walk into this meeting. Okay. Triple B method for stopping an emotional hijack. Now we're going to look at some self-awareness. What time are we at? Let's get just a little bit into this self-awareness, and in the midst of this, we will take a break and give you a chance to fill out some of these answers. This is a chance to think about. All right, this is a chance for us to think about what might be causing us to act in low EQ ways and how we could avoid this. And I've asked you to complete this between now and next week and submit this as homework, but I'd like to just get started so we have a chance to brainstorm and think about some best practices in terms of how to approach this. So what I would like to do is I'm going to direct your attention to the third page, which is Emotional Hijack Trigger Worksheet. And I would like to ask you to think of some past events that have triggered an emotional hijack. And this is not an event where your physical well-being was actually threatened. This was an event where you were scared and it wasn't necessarily helpful. So that time you got mugged in Detroit, don't put that one down. Put the time where you got nervous and stressed and it compromised your ability to communicate. And then I have the first question, any actual threat to your physical well-being? And the answer to that is going to be no, because if it's yes, you should be looking at it in a different context. I just put that there to remind you, your physical well-being was not in jeopardy. But you did feel threatened for whatever reason. Maybe you felt threatened socially, professionally, financially. Think about why you felt threatened. And then lastly, how might you describe this category of event? And the more you can describe categories of events that cause you emotional hijack tendencies, the more you can be aware and prepare for those events and think about using some of these techniques to overcome them. So I would like you to just spend a couple minutes doing that. And I want to draw your attention to the previous page, and that is professional goal worksheet. And you don't need to in-depthly put in your goals right now, but I mention that because I just want to think about your professional goals and how they might be compromised by emotional hijack situations that you have encountered. Because if you encounter an emotional hijack situation and it doesn't really hurt you, doesn't really matter to you, then that's not going to be as important to your professional success. Let's think strategically like Daniel Goleman did and say, what is your goal in terms of your effective job performance? What are you trying to accomplish? And what are 3 events that triggered emotional hijacks that led to a compromise in your ability to do that? So think for like 30 seconds about your professional goals. Maybe jot them down if you want to, just put them in context. And then let's think about 3 events that triggered an emotional hijack in the past. And let's take about 15 minutes and combine that if you need to take a break, if you need to stretch your legs, whatever. Let's come back together at 7:42, and we'll think about 3 events in your past that triggered an emotional hijack. Any questions before I send you off to do that? Okay, fantastic. So we'll come back together in 15 minutes and we'll discuss past events.
Did we have to fill out anything last week? You mentioned the glass of water, something over the weekend.
All right, let's come back together and think about the analysis that you've done on your past emotional hijack situations. And let's just get some examples and make sure we're using examples that are going to be the best for us as we analyze this. And we think about what broad categories, what dangerous situations, what dangerous relationships do we need to be aware of as a result of this initial analysis. So what do we have for examples of past emotional hijacks? Okay.
Speaking in front of our heard a number of our senior leaders and folks in the company, and I had presentation notes on one TV in front of the stage that I was on, the slides that were behind me, and also in front of me on another TV. And right before I was going to get up, one of the communications directors who was putting on the event, sure enough, she said there was an issue. Presentation notes are gone. I didn't know what exactly that meant until I got up there and realized, at least my talking points, it was a blank slot.
Oh,
So,
okay.
just trying to figure out exactly what lines I wanted to say verbatim and do that, on the fly in front of, presidents and all those folks. Just one of those moments where you kind of stop and gather things and realize, all right, gotta take it.
How'd you do? So you looked
Mediocre.
mediocre? Heart start beating, short of breath?
Not that bad, but it was one of those things where I had to definitively pause and collect my thoughts and figure out, where are we going?
Okay. So you might, and that seems like a well-handled emotional hijack situation. But what might be valuable for that is you could say you get nervous when you don't have your preparation notes.
Well, it was more that I was fair enough prepared to do it without them, but expecting to have them there and then all of a sudden them not being there was the issue. Was the unknown.
Okay, so the surprise. So the surprise might be something for you to keep in mind too. That when you're surprised, that could put you in a tough situation. So when you get a surprise like that, you say, all right, make sure I don't say the wrong thing. I'm surprised. I'm in a situation where I might just get a little bit irrational here. All right, what else do we have? Nick.
Actually, interesting story. So a few months back in March, every year our company does promotions for people who've been there for a while, and I was told that I was guaranteed and approved to be promoted.
Okay.
So I actually went home to my family. I told everyone, I was like, I'm on the list. It's approved. And then the next day, and they publish it purposely at the end of the business day, so you can go home and sleep on it, and then wake up in the morning. And my name wasn't on the list. And that night, I actually wrote my resignation letter, and I booked a vacation. And oddly enough, on that vacation, so I had an irrational kind of response, which is basically I told my boss, I was like, this is my last couple weeks, and he was like, well, let's chat about it.
You told him at the end of the day? Or at the
I
end of
called
the
him up that night. So I said I have my letter and this and that. And he goes, let's chat about it tomorrow. He goes, I'm sure there's a logical explanation, and there wasn't, But what ended up happening was after I took the 24 hours, I'm still sour about it. But it's one of the reasons why I'm now at Rutgers, because I actually took a vacation and I was like, well, if I'm not moving there, I don't want to be stagnant at a job. I want to be always striving. So I applied to business school and went back to school.
Okay. So you're just able to see the positives and everything, but
Able to see the positives, but my initial reaction, luckily I had someone there to support me not going through with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise the letter would be sent.
Okay, so you had a period of losing rational ability to think.
Correct.
So you need to be aware. How would you broadly describe that category of event?
I would say it was low emotional management.
Meaning like, was this a threat to your financial well-being? Was this like a surprise? Like, I broadly categorize Jameson as a surprise. All right, that's something you say. All right, surprise will sometimes send me an emotional hijack. This could be.
So it was a surprise. I would say it was threatening professionally and socially.
Okay. Okay. All right. Keep the thing. I want to think if we can get more specific than that as we go on. But let's hear some other examples. Danny. Okay, unmet expectations. That can annoy people. Absolutely. David.
I was on a transition team. There were 4 of us, and we were consolidating down 5 national back offices of companies we bought down to 1. We were about 9 months into it. It was going well, but not great. And the boss informed us that he was being reassigned, and somebody else was coming in to take it over. And I knew the guy who hated him that was coming to take it over.
Okay.
And my reaction was great. I changed my travel plans because I was flying constantly anyways. I went home, so I didn't have to see him because he was flying in the next day.
Okay.
So I changed my plans for like 2 weeks as to where I was going to be so I could avoid him.
Okay. Was that a bad thing? Did that end up hurting you?
Well, I took a different assignment a couple months later.
Okay. Was there a point where you just felt some sort of emotional hijack, heart beating, adrenaline running through your body because you hated this person so much?
Yeah, well, I felt so I knew him. He was very political in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood his the group of people that sort of followed him around. So I felt immediately this is the beginning of the end. Right, he's going to replace us with all his guys. He'll take credit for the work that we did.
Okay.
And,
okay.
So I felt that sort of response. So I just avoided having to.
Okay.
Deal with him.
Excellent. Some other examples. Renee.
This is really, really interesting. So, when I first started off with this job, I was in training. Training takes up to like a year. So there's like a lot of material that you have to study for, and you're constantly traveling back and forth from corporate. So I'm like studying all the material, and I wasn't sleeping that well. And one day, the next morning, I was like up late the night before, studying really hard. And the next morning, I was supposed to be at a hospital at like 6:30 in the morning to turn a defibrillator off, and I figured that I could just keep my phone under my pillow so I would hear it better. Except the volume was like really, really low, and I didn't hear my alarm. And I showed up like an hour and a half late, and the OR is waiting for me to get there.
Okay.
And my manager finds out, and like the following week he had a talk with me, and I thought that he was going to fire me.
Okay.
So, in terms of my heart beating out of my chest and being threatened, definitely professionally threatened. And I thought.
But okay. So Well, sure. So you had an emotional hijack, but I want to get to the point when this happened. And this was usually, we want to think about this in terms of an exact moment where you could say, boom, I started an emotional hijack and I lost rational thought. I may have done things that compromised my abilities to reach my goals.
So I was sitting down with my manager.
So this is a week after it happened, and he says, we need to talk about...
And right off the bat, I'm like, crap, I'm gonna get fired.
Okay.
So I meet up with him, and he was like, so, tell me what happened. He wants to hear my side of the story. And I told him what happened, and then he kind of just started going off about how serious this is and how this is absolutely unacceptable. And I pretty much just started crying.
Okay, good. Now we're getting somewhere. All right. We want to get to the point where you're experiencing emotional hijack, and you may want to think about using some of these techniques. And we want to broadly categorize these types of events so we can say, when my boss says something that I did wrong that I knew was wrong, or when I feel like my job is where I might get I might lose my job. That's not something that would surprise any of us that scares you, but where that's good analysis for you is when I feel like my job is in jeopardy, I might lose rational thought. So I can think about what I need to do to prepare for that and what I need to do to practice better emotional intelligence in that situation. Does that make sense? I mean, is there anything that happened in that meeting where you thought, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have started crying, or maybe I should have...
Not screwed up.
Okay, well, they're not screwed up. That's a larger issue, but from emotional intelligence, we have to understand these mistakes and these screw-ups happen. It's, do we go into an emotional hijack just because they happen? Or can we see the positive side without being irrationally positive and think about how we can best handle this interaction in a way that's going to just be better for us? So, yeah, does that make sense? So maybe crying hurt you in that situation? So thinking about how you could avoid that reaction. Jim.
So I had a coworker who's we were so less experienced than I was, and we were talking one day, and something came out about what this person was making, and I was kind of like insulted because it was less than me, but the difference was not enough to justify the difference in our responsibility. So we're technically the same role, same position and title. And I was like I'm a very calm, kind of bitch. I'm like, oh yeah, and my friend was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Uh-huh.
And so I was thinking about it, and my initial reaction was to go to our manager and go, what's going on here? But then I kind of was like, okay, let me stop. This doesn't really make sense. And I kind of knew that I thought about it a little bit more, and I followed up with some of the LinkedIn recruiters, the ones that sit in your inbox for like weeks, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what, I'm going to want all these. And I did, and it turns out that I ended up getting promoted 3 weeks later. And so the pay went up, all these other things. But had I said something to my boss at that time, in a very short time, 2-3 weeks, had I said something, it probably would have been viewed as unprofessional or very negative. But I was angry, and it was almost like it was like an insult.
Uh-huh.
And so at the time, I was not trusting that my boss was going to make that situation right. I thought I was basically being played. And what ended up happening is that he had intention of leaving me out of that role very shortly. I never said anything to him. I don't think this person said anything. But I could have blown all of that.
Okay. So that awareness, it was the lack of fairness. Was it dishonesty? Was it what's the thing that you think may have caused that reaction?
It felt like a lack of fairness, but that was more of just I guess it was really like the dishonesty, because I've been hearing from my boss, you're doing your job, thanks for doing those things, kind of like, okay, if you mean those things, why is there such a little difference in pay based on my responsibility and what you're doing? And it was just based right around review time. It just so happens this person had their review before me and my boss was getting to the department, and they wanted to move up. It was just a motion.
Okay. All right. fantastic. So we've got some events. We've got lack of fairness. We've got surprise. We've got losing our job. We've got sort of things that we can categorize that may send us into an emotional hijack. And this is what I want. And I want to hear for some more of you after we complete the next 2 pages, which is where we think about how can we, with this awareness that we've gained, which is just taking pen to paper and saying, surprise can put me into an emotional hijack situation. Lack of fairness can put me into an emotional hijack situation. That awareness can save you those critical moments before you'll do something irrational like call your boss up in the middle of the night saying, I want to quit. So the next 2 pages ask you to think about a potentially dangerous environment, which might be when you're giving a presentation, or a potentially dangerous relationship. And I guess we didn't really talk about, none of the examples were potentially dangerous relationships, but they could have been. Maybe some of you wrote down situations where your older sister, commented on your hair, or your mother commented on something, and that relationship puts you in a compromised position. So you could use a dangerous relationship. You could also use a dangerous environment. And I've asked you to think about 3 things. How does this affect your behavior? Behavioral limitations. Makes you less able to see the broader picture in terms of where your career might go. It may make you less able to be empathetic, maybe less able to think about what your boss was thinking because you're mad. Right? Jim was mad, so it might have compromised some of his ability to think about the rationale behind this. So how does this limit your behavior? Are there any early warning signs? Now, typically, this will just be your heart starts beating, you start breathing hard. But there are other specific warning signs that just thinking about could tell you important information. You notice when your neck just gets really tense. Oh, I didn't realize I was that mad. But now that I feel my neck being really tense, I guess that situation did annoy me much more than I thought. And then the third thing is positive actions, which is, of course, the critical point. What should we do instead of reacting negatively? Instead of calling up our boss and saying we want to quit, instead of crying during the middle of a difficult conversation, what should we do instead? And I think Jim gave us some good examples. Let me take a breath. Let me look on LinkedIn and reply to some folks. And let me just think about the bigger picture of where my career might go. Let me take 24 hours. Let me have someone who could support me through this situation. Call the manager who I trust rather than the manager who's going to immediately take that information and use it against me. So those 3 things. Think about how you could put these broad categories into potentially dangerous environments, potentially dangerous relationships, and think about the 3 things. What are the behavioral limitations? Any early warning signs? And positive actions you should take. So if you can, come up with at least one good one. And we'll discuss that for a minute, and then we'll move on, and I'll let you finish the rest of that at your leisure. So dangerous environment might be giving a presentation in front of your boss. It might be having a conversation with your boss. It could be, in some of the examples we talked about, being in an environment, you could think more broadly and say an environment where there's unfairness, like Jim mentioned. All right. So does everyone have at least one? All right. Let's see if we can get a couple good ones and think about how this can help us take this information we've been digesting over the past 2 hours and turn it into practical, tangible takeaways. Love it. Is that your hand or are you just playing? No? Okay.
I can go ahead. So, the situation with me was pretty much similar to yours.
Okay.
First thing I did, reaction was to cry.
Okay.
And we were at a pretty very difficult time when we were working on a project, and it was probably one of my biggest projects in the company that I started out with. So I was working with two female bosses who were just so against each other. They could not work with each other. They were both in the same position, but they refused to see eye to eye. They both wanted more power, basically.
Okay.
And I was under one of them. So what they would do is just grab work from each other the whole time. Finally, one after the other, every day, every week, it used to be like, okay, I was one of the subordinates, so I didn't have much of a say. They used to say, okay, do this, and then they would come back and say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, do something else. But they just decided these things. So one fine morning, my manager called me into a room, and he understood exactly what was going on. He called me into a room before anybody showed up, and he's like, okay, so they took the reports also from you. So I'm like, okay, I'm left with nothing right now. What do you want me to do? I was in a position where I didn't have anything else to do for that day.
Okay.
So my first reaction was I cried. And this manager was this guy who always thought that all the female people in the team were giving him trouble. So he didn't have a very good impression about me crying.
Okay.
So it's like two of the other female are bothering me and you're crying now. That was the first reaction. I didn't want to cry. I tried to control my emotions as much as I could, but I was so mad at the situation because it was going on for weeks and months by then.
Okay.
I didn't know how to react. And I felt like I knew everything and they just took away everything from me. I felt like they were not doing justice to me. That was what I felt like.
Okay, so not being treated fairly.
Exactly.
Was it your job was threatened because you didn't have anything to do, so you could be gone?
No, my job wasn't threatened. I still had my job and I knew that for sure. I just felt pretty insulted. And
Okay.
I felt like it was not my problem that I'm being treated this way. They both had issues with themselves and I was made a scapegoat in this whole thing.
Okay. So all right. So being insulted, and what were your behavioral limitations?
I refused to see the big picture there. I could have spoken to my manager more reasonably and tried to understand what was happening. I just refused to look at any of that. I basically threatened him saying I'm going to leave right now. I'm not going to come back tomorrow morning.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't tell us that part.
I did. I just basically I was ready to take my bag and walk out. So he kind of had to like calm me down, but I don't think that was his position to do all of that.
Okay, so here's a situation that really had nothing to do with her. It was two managers fighting with each other. That was the crux of this. But for some reason, you felt really insulted by this and started to cry in a way that wasn't considered professional and actually threatened to quit as a result of that. And you're able to see the big picture so much more effectively when you look at it, put it on pen and paper.
Yeah.
But what's valuable in this exercise is to think about, all right, when I feel insulted, I can't see the big picture, and sometimes I don't act professionally. So the next time someone insults you, you're going to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think till now I think about that experience. It's been 2 years. It's made me much stronger.
Uh-huh.
And now if somebody tries to threaten me like that, I know what to do. I kind of calm down much. I don't go back yelling at people or crying or threatening to quit because that's really not what I want to do.
Okay.
But the negative part of it is that's the manager I still work with, and even though I've become much better at my job, knowledgeable, he still doesn't trust me as much because he still thinks I'm a little weak.
Oh, he doesn't? So 2 years later, he still remembers when you were crying in his office.
I feel like he still thinks I'm a little weak. That's not something I like about
Okay. All right. So this is a different slant on it. This is often I'll hear examples of where I lost my temper and I yelled at someone, and then 20 years later, they're still holding a grudge. But this is a similar example in that this manager remembers this interaction, and it hurts you 2 years later. Good. All right. Let's get some other examples. Mary.
So, my situation, it was like a month ago. There's a special thing we're doing because the real technical system isn't ready. So we're doing a lot of manual stuff. I'm the only one who really can connect all the pieces together. They brought in a woman who's supposed to be like the tough guy because it went so bad before. But the bad part of that is she doesn't know me and doesn't know you don't need to yell at me on a conference call because the number you wanted to hear was what we gave you, because she doesn't know what I was asked. She knows that she asked somebody else who then asked somebody who didn't ask me.
Okay.
So instead of saying, hey, can you check on the number? She said, well, first you said it was 7, then you said it was 100, then you said it was 7. Which one is it?
Okay.
So in the moment, I knew what kind of person she was. So I didn't react to her immediately.
Okay.
Badly. I was very calm, but since that moment, I had been plotting my revenge and plotting how I was going to resign in dramatic fashion the next day. I didn't even work for her. That wasn't accused that bad. But, you know, because I was the only one who could do all this stuff, I knew I was really.
Well, it sounds okay so far. I'm okay. I don't see an emotional hijack yet.
But I've not forgotten that.
Okay, so you're still stewing in resentment, just like Jameson and I talked about you should not do on family vacations.
Yes. And I told several people, including my manager and his manager, that if she yells at me again, the calls are going to get very interesting. So I never stopped planning to retaliate. Even though she didn't do it again, I've not forgotten that. So you're talking about the emotional damage years later.
Okay.
And I'm still waiting for her to do something else, even though I've never told her.
Okay.
So the verbal abuse affects me.
Right.
Because it's not necessary.
And we need her in class explaining, one time someone told me one thing, someone else told me another thing, and then a third person told me this, and I yelled at the third person, not realizing that she wasn't the one who gave me the initial wrong information. And she damaged the relationship as a result. So in her case, she might say, okay, this was misinformation, and I freaked out at misinformation, and I damaged the relationship as a result. So when I hear something I consider misinformation, I maybe should take a breath. And maybe that manager might have some early warning signs. When I hear misinformation, my stomach tightens up.
When I get abused verbally for no reason, I don't ever forget. Still plotting to retaliate.
Okay.
First chance.
Remind me never to make you mad. Just give me a chance to apologize. Okay, do we have another couple? Just so we can think. I really want to think about just the succinct way to sum these up. Did you hear how I just summed up this from the manager's point of view? All right, misinformation threw her into this emotional hijack rage, and as a result, she ruined the relationship. So if this manager were sitting in the room right now, I would say, what was an early warning sign, and what should you have done instead? And just going through that for 1 second can help you when the situation happens again. Someone have a shot? You said this was a colleague of yours? A peer of mine. So she was kind of undermining you. She was kind of taking a management role when it was kind of inappropriate, or. Okay.
So I got escalated to a lot of support for me was got escalated at a very high level. And I was put in the position that I had to defend my team. And first thing I told my team is that, I have your back, so don't worry, I'm not going to take anyone of you with me in the office, but I'll defend our team. And I was very, and then I entered the office of this, senior person. I don't get nervous that often, and that time I was really nervous because I walked in alone, but my peer and our boss walked in together, so they had really teamed up there. And it wasn't a big deal. Like in a big picture, it was not a big deal. So I think physically I was very nervous, and I've never been as nervous. And in the end, actually, the senior person said, "It's a big deal." So walking out of the office, it wasn't a big deal, and he actually
what was it that set you off, that caused that nervousness?
I think being put in a position where if it's a big deal and I feel like if you made an error, the people really own up to it, but it's a political side of it, where something was escalated for no reason. It was more of a game political something than anything else.
So it was just like it was annoying, or was it that because she teamed up with her boss that you felt
It
that
was with our boss.
she teamed up with your boss and her boss? Was it the fact that she had gathered support that might be used against
Yeah, I
you?
think that was it, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. So maybe when you see two people come at you, that could trigger an emotional hijack?
Yeah, and I think it's where if I don't understand, if it's not, if I do understand the situation and if it's a fair situation, I'm fine with it. And but it's where if I see the situation is not fair and it's games being played, I'm not good at it. So, but I've learned after that, I've learned how to put down those signals.
Okay. Okay. Was there something you did during that meeting that you regret doing?
No, I didn't know. I actually nothing during the meeting. No.
Okay.
So, but I was really nervous that I've never been in there. I was walking, I was showing paper or something. My hands were trembling, so I had to put my hands down. So I don't. So I'm like very calm. I come across calm, but it's not, So, but I think since that was like 5 years ago, so I've learned since then.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. And do y'all see what I'm doing? I'm trying to categorize this in a way that's useful going forward. Does that make sense? The approach that I'm trying to take with this?
So I don't know how.
I would say maybe two people coming at you cause that. It could also be just the backstabbing type of aspect of it. What's that? Betrayal. Okay. So betrayal, politics. You said politics. So maybe that's something that could cause a special sense of annoyance. Like if I feel that someone just says they don't like me or don't like my work, okay, I can deal with that. But if I feel like they've enlisted someone else's support, or I feel like they're doing it in a cunning, manipulative way, maybe that's something that could trigger a sense of inequity that I feel I need to correct.
Right, and I tend to be more about it because my boss should have kind of supported me as well there, and there's no conversation with me trying to figure out what happened. It was just escalated.
Okay, so let's do this. I saw some other hands. If we've got maybe anyone wants to comment on a way of kind of trying to bring this into a succinct, this is what happened, these are the behavioral limitations, these are potential positive actions, or if someone wants to try to succinctly sum up their situation like that, maybe we can, all hands went down.
I
Alex.
think I could try. So, like for me, I think that an emotional hijack is when I feel like someone's trying to like mess up my reputation at work. Like for example, if someone copies other people on an email and tries to make me look bad, that really I can tell when I start getting upset. Like my heart starts pounding, or like I just get warm, and then I feel like sometimes that can hijack you there if you like reply back in an unprofessional manner, and then you can also ruin relationships. So I think taking some of the steps of just like breathing, like walking away, like waiting a few minutes till you get your rational thought back, and then framing a response back better could.
Right. Have you gotten in those situations before where you replied too quickly?
Yeah. No, actually, like I usually don't reply, just walk up to the person, and
No, you won't.
and I just let everyone hear exactly what I'm saying and get really upset.
Okay, so you've had a couple of those confrontations.
Yeah, like I work in very competitive environments where like your promotion is based like on a merit system, like only X amount of people can get promoted. So then it looks like people try to like knock the other people off or make them look bad. So at the end of the year, I guess they're the only ones with good reviews. So I'm kind of like let people know like I'm not like don't try to make this.
Has that been the result? Like, have you gotten into? Does that work positively when you walk over to someone?
Actually, it has worked positively because.
Okay. Okay.
And that was one thing I was going to ask. Like, if you're dealing with people that have low EQ or that just don't care, and then you're constantly like trying to be nice or constantly using high EQ against them, I think sometimes you kind of have to, like, I don't know, maybe like drop it down a little bit,
drop down to get down to their level.
so they can understand, like, what I guess.
Well, they'll still get mad like everyone else gets mad. I mean, if you threaten them, if you embarrass them, because they have low EQ, they may even get more mad. They have less ability to put themselves in your shoes. They have less ability to realize that they did something wrong. So it could still damage the relationship just as much. And because you said sometimes walking over to the other cubicle worked in a positive way, let's not talk about that. Let's stay on where you've identified that when your professional reputation is threatened, that sends you into an emotional hijack. What not to do? Reply right away. What to do? Get some air, take a breath.
Yeah, and at other times where I've done that, it's helped, and I've actually built a better relationship.
Okay, so that's all we're going for. That's all we've been building up to, was to think about what those situations are, what your limitations are, what warnings you might have, and what you should do that's positive. Does that make sense? All right. So, self-awareness, we've done some great work. Please continue that and fill that out and scan it and upload it to Blackboard. Or if you want to upload, if you want to, I've got the Word document on Blackboard. You could open that and type your answers in if you want. You don't need to get too in-depth with your answers. Just scribble something, scan it, send it to me, and I'll give you full credit for it. So that's a self-awareness start. Improving your social management. You'll be happy to know that self-awareness is key. That work we just did. What emotional triggers put you in a difficult situation? What professional and social situations make you nervous? What types of relationships might be difficult for you? What are the warning signs? How's your behavior limited? What should you do? Most important. And I realize this can be one of those things where you think like, well, this is going to make a really big deal that I just identify some of these things. Well, it really can. I think it can. I think just thinking about what can cause you those emotional reactions can help you prepare for those in the future. Avoid emotional hijack is something that this self-awareness can help us with and help us control our emotional management. It can also help us avoid something I might call a longer-term emotional hijack, which is, I gave the example earlier, if you get mad at all the people in the copy room because they did something really annoying, 20 years later when you're still working at the same company and you just get mad every time you think about them, it's only going to hurt you, and you want to try to think of a way to avoid that. Avoid corrupting your emotional management skills because you're mad about something that happened years ago. I like that you're plotting your revenge, Marilyn, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned for you. I'm not concerned for the manager. I'm concerned for you. I want to know how that might be hurting you and your relationships. Are people going to get nervous about you? I think you told your boss and his or her boss, or told some other people. They might say, ooh, Marilyn's not the person you want to mess with. If you find that that's hurting you, that's when I would step in and say, avoid that longer-term consequence. Okay, improving social management. What do I have here? Empathy. Analysis and practice, insight, analysis and practice. So remember I said there are three components of social management. You could divide it up in many ways, but three components I wanted to point out to you. The first is empathy, your ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Think about what they're going through so you don't get intensely annoyed on that family vacation. You understand, all right, they're having a bad day, they're mad about their divorce, they're mad about this, they're mad about that. And that's why they made that really annoying comment about how, I haven't, gotten a promotion, or, why I'm still dating so-and-so. So that ability to put yourself in their shoes is going to help you with your social management. And as you put yourself in someone else's shoes, you can think about why. You can have the insight. It's just practicing. Just thinking about it exactly like we're doing now, and thinking about it in the moment will help you as well. We'll do some examples next week where we'll see that. We'll say, all right, if I had looked at this from this person's point of view, they would have been more likely to agree with me. Empathy and insight, analysis and practice. In terms of relating to people,
let's say analysis and practice, relating to people. We want to, just continue with our analysis and practice, but there are two techniques that I like to recommend, that I like to teach, talk about with emotional intelligence in terms of relating to other people. Two techniques that can help us. The first is this idea of asking questions versus statements. The second is this idea that our intentions are different from our impact. And I'm going to skip questions or statement for right now. I'm going to go straight to intentions and impact. And I want to explain how that can work in our emotional intelligence discovery. So let's skip this for a minute. I decided I'm more interested in intentions and impact based on some of the things that we discussed earlier, some of the things that came up. So this is the idea that when we go through our professional lives and we try to accomplish things, we try to complete the job, we have intentions. When we start a discussion, our intention is to make a team stronger. When we start a discussion, our intention is to make a relationship more positive. And we have intentions. We have things that we want to accomplish, trying to do. On the other hand, there's also an impact. Sometimes when we start that discussion with someone at work and our intention is to make the team stronger, the impact is different. The impact is this person is harassing me. And the impact is this person is not empathizing with me. So the idea here is that in social interactions, our intentions are different from our impact. And the question from an emotional intelligence standpoint is, do we tend to judge ourselves by our intentions or by our impact? Intentions. We judge ourselves by our intentions, of course, because I have good intentions. I wanted to help you. I wanted to create a positive relationship. That's why I brought this awkward thing up. Of course, I had good intentions. Why wouldn't I judge myself that way? Next question. How do we judge other people? Do we judge them based on intentions or their impact? Impact. We don't know their intentions. We just know that they ruined our morning when they called us and said, we need to talk about doing better reports, or there's an error in your report. We don't know that their intention was to make the team stronger. So there's a problem from an emotional intelligence standpoint when we judge ourselves by our intentions and we judge other people by our impact. And that's where this invisible conflict can be created that we can identify and we can eliminate. We can hopefully uncover ways to interact more positively just based on the fact that we know there's a difference. All right, so we've got this cliff here. I spent a lot of time creating this visual aid, so I hope you like it. We've got one guy over on one side with intentions. We've got another guy over on the other side. The impact of those intentions. All right, this person says hi. This person like, what? Are you saying hi? Are you insulting me? I don't know. There's a gulf there. And the first time I took an emotional intelligence workshop, the instructor who led us through this just loved this idea of saying, evil gets way too much credit in the world. Right? Evil is really not a thing. It's just people with good intentions and bad skills. So this gulf between intentions and impacts can be defined sometimes by what we call evil. You can say, all right, you have bad intentions, or you're trying to do something wrong, or you're trying to manipulate the situation, and really we just don't understand what their intentions are. Evil gets way too much credit in the world. So often it's not people being evil, it's just people with good intentions and poor skills. So, evil. All right. How might we bridge that gap? Right? How might we clear up that confusion between intentions and impact? Whether it's something we're initiating or someone else is initiating. Nick?
I think the first thing you do is make your intentions known.
Make your intentions known. Yeah, I love that idea. Label your intentions. When you knock on someone's cubicle, yes. Oh, I was going to say, when you knock on someone's cubicle, say, my intention here is I want to help the team get stronger. I didn't come over here to ruin your day. I didn't come over here to fire you. I just want you to make sure you understand that.
It's funny you talk about this now, because earlier today, I had a one-on-one with somebody who, they had a very unique name. So I asked them that. At the end of our discussion, I said, I have one more question for you. And I kind of made a joke, like, where are you from? Tell me about your nationality and stuff. And so they went about telling me, and they were, everything was going well. And then I said, yeah, I went to this certain part of the world that's next to, the place that you're from. I did service there, and then I started noticing that they were getting a little bit on edge. And then, as I was trying to make it a little bit more general by saying instead of just the city, by saying the name of the country, so they were getting more on edge. And then in the end, she was like, okay, just stop there, just stop there. And I had no idea what I had hit on. And then so, trying to back out of that hole, I just got into it. So I said, I'm always interested when I hear people's names learn about diversity and see, just the fact that people can speak different languages kind of boggles my mind, and just bringing it back to the diversity standpoint. And as I thought about it in hindsight, apparently this place that I visited was at cultural odds with this place that she's from.
Uh-huh.
And as I started to elaborate on it, she got more and more.
Oh, okay. Good. So your intention was to just connect with her and say you're interested in her and where she's from. But you had a different impact. And you could just label it. You could say, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I just wanted to connect with you. Maybe that would help. But it sounds like you handled the situation relatively well. By realizing she was uncomfortable. Maybe you can smooth it over. Labeling is key. I suggest we build that bridge by labeling. This is the visual aid I worked especially hard on. Alright? Label intention impact. Say, my intention is, monitor for hijack, right? If you see this woman becoming very uncomfortable, say, I'm sorry if I got into an area that made you uncomfortable in terms of my lack of knowledge of where you're from. But my intention was to just ask about that because I'm interested. And distinguish it from your impact, just like we did. Label the impact. You could look at it either way. I want to label my intention or label the impact. Just be cognizant of both and try to bring that to the surface of the discussion. Say this is my intention. Say I see the impact as something different than that. Does that make sense? All right. Okay. Failing to label could cause an emotional hijack, perhaps like it did with Daniel's coworker this morning. Misunderstanding. It was just a misunderstanding. People could get defensive, hurt bitter feelings, jump to solutions, wrong solutions. We don't want this stuff to happen, so we want to try labeling. Make sense? All right. Let's see. What I want to do now very quickly is I want to go back to questions versus questions versus statements, because this is it's just a little more nuanced. I didn't want to get into this. Until we had laid some groundwork with the intention versus impact. The idea here, and I want you to think about this and explore this a little bit on the self-assessment or the EQ workbook. The idea is that sometimes statements can be more emotionally triggering than questions. If you make a statement, sometimes that can be more emotionally triggering than a question. Reason can be is because a statement will often say something that the person has to evaluate for a threat. I use the analogy that it can occupy space. You lay down that statement. You say, this report has to be fixed. Okay, am I being threatened? Is my quality of work being threatened? Is my team being threatened? You definitely said it had to be fixed. You didn't ask me a question, so I have no need for cerebral engagement, really. Well, I do have a reason for cerebral engagement, but you didn't ask me a question to get me thinking about how it could be fixed, if it really needs to be fixed. So, a question It might occupy the same amount of space, if you will, but it also might engage your audience in a way that makes them less likely to go into an emotional hijack. Does that make sense? Right. Statements occupy space, requires threat assessment, ventricular amygdala, less negotiable, less need for cerebral engagement. Absolute statements can get you into trouble, especially. This absolutely has to be fixed. Okay, does it? Are you sure? Well, sometimes it can be sometimes statements can be necessary, and this is part of the reason why I avoided this slide, is because we can get into a very lengthy discussion about, well, you can easily ask a question which will freak someone out. That is absolutely possible. You can ask a question which will definitely send them to an emotional hijack. And you could give me 10 examples right now, and I've asked you to think about some of those examples in the worksheets.
You think we should buy a new crib? Plus
Okay. Okay, yeah, especially if I weren't thinking, I thought the crib was fine.
Or if you don't own one at all.
You don't, what's that?
If you don't own one at all.
Oh, okay. Yes, I understand. Do you think we should buy a new crib? All right, I'm going to hear that one in my sleep. Maybe we should buy a new crib. Questions may not occupy space. Okay, good. So what I've asked you to do in the worksheets is just think about how statements can cause an emotional hijack. Think about how questions could also cause an emotional hijack, but how you could turn that statement into a question that would not. Does that make sense? All right, and then the very last thing was these two slides where I've just talked about labeling intention versus impact. And I'll go through them very, very quickly. Okay. So suppose I'm going to initiate a conversation. I'm going to have intentions for initiating this conversation. All right, I want the team to be performing more effectively. I'm not saying anyone on the team deserves to be fired. I'm not saying anyone's doing anything maliciously. I just want the team to be performing more effectively. That is my intention. So that could have an impact on the person I initiate that conversation with. They could feel threatened. So I want to think about how I want to present that. Ways I could label my intention to make the team work more effectively. I could say, very simple verbiage. My intention is, my goal for this conversation. Label. Label could make the difference between putting someone into an emotional hijack and not. I want to monitor the impact that has on the other party. And I want to label what's going on with them. Did it cause an emotional hijack? So I might say things like, how does that sound to you? Is this something that could have a positive impact? How does that sound to you is very, very important, very key. Is this something that's causing you distress? How does that sound to you? You tell me. I want to hear from you. I want to put myself in your shoes, think about how you're receiving this conversation. This person we're going to have the conversation with, they're going to say something back to us, and we might want to uncover their intentions. Because we might think that they're questioning our authority when they fire something back at us. We might think that they don't want us to help them, that they're not cooperative. So let's dig and find out what their true intentions are. And keep in mind, I'm looking at this from the perspective of the person who initiates this conversation. We had intentions, we monitored the impact on the person we started the conversation with, and now we're trying to uncover the intentions of their response. We might ask very simple questions like, am I understanding you correctly that you do or don't like this idea? So what you're telling me is you don't like this idea. You're not telling me that you hate me. You're not telling me that you don't respect my authority as your manager. You're not telling me that you're going to quit tomorrow. You're just telling me you don't like this idea, right? That's your intention, because I'm getting a lot of different noise, and I just want to be clear. You're telling me you don't like this idea. And then, of course, their response to us may have an impact on us. And instead of saying something that gets misinterpreted, we want to think about labeling our intention when we say something back to them. Such as, the
the way that impacts me. It impacts me that that you don't think I can be helpful. Is that your intention? Because I want to be helpful. So these are very simple terms, very simple things you can use to label your intentions, label your impact you might have on someone, and from the other side as well. Any questions on this? All right, great. I don't want to go through the last slide. It's pretty much the exact same thing, just the mirror image. You all have been great. This is, I think, really useful stuff, but I know it can be hard to just sit through 2 hours of lecture about it. But hopefully we did some good groundwork and you put yourself in a position to absorb this material, and I really think you did. And we'll have more fun next week when we actually get to execute. We'll go through some difficult conversation scenarios, think about using this in practical terms. As far as homework, I think I've asked you to do the EQ worksheets. Just fill those out, submit them on Blackboard. You also have your corporate change memo, which is due next week. And then there's just a couple people I'm going to connect with on Skype to get ready for the camera workshop, which is in 2 weeks. Any questions? All right, I look forward to seeing you next week for the practical application of emotional intelligence. We went through the on-camera worksheet stuff before you got here. And we assigned you a role. Unless you wanted to do something different. I think we... So we assigned you to be a reporter for the BP. So read the we're gonna have 3 reporters. So just yeah. Do I have some links here that we know how to? I think I'm click here. The video. Yeah, so just familiarize yourself a little bit with that when you think about what questions you want to ask this EP. So you can throw Daniel off.
Thank you.
Yes, you bet. Thanks.
No, but weird, but okay.
Folks who don't participate in things then publish either through email or to other people, certain reasons why that won't work.
Yeah.
We just got through this discussion without
I didn't know they performed other times than Christmas and Summer.
Yes.
So those 2 things in one time. We're working on a project now.
Aw, it's beautiful. Aw, it's at least you're not it's not all too creepy if you don't know. You know, if you don't know the guy, that's very creepy.
But basically, anything I suggested wasn't happening. It's all it was to it.
You set her up. Yeah. Okay.
So I ran it through how exactly this was.
Everyone I talked to today was like,
I knew she had enough
I can't wait.
I know. For some reason, I think today was the day it just hit everywhere. For whatever reason, it's just like, what the?
And it was over the Lost Family and
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I think I know what it is. It's always from just a big weekend, or a big weekend holiday, whatever it is. Everyone needs to get things done right away because, you know, they can't wait until the afternoon or whatever. I'm like, you didn't, exactly. And I was like, you didn't think about this when maybe like last week or the week before? Why last week?
Okay.
It's like almost like your poor
plan,
planning
and that's how
became my
ultimately the
emergency.
accident should be done.
And I mean,
Ruined
what is that about?
Well,
It
so
shouldn't
that,
be like that.
I mean, I'm okay with that. So,
Does it seem like a cop out on his part? Like,
That's
to
just
figure out
my
what
rant for the day.
Try to address the problem of someone who's right, like
Well, that was my job. My job is to walk into an organizational forum and say, you won't be working here. We're reorging the whole thing.
I can't wait to read your
That was sort of what I was. Just thought it was so.
How do you become a
Well, it's a factory. It's an elementary.
You brought your problem directly to him, or potentially to bring it to the surface, or get it resolved, or yeah.
Well, he also thought I did it because I told him about this a couple of times and I wasn't getting any help in resolving the issues. Outsiders make this happen all at once. Now I know it's not right. So I'm not thinking one of the parts where she's told me I don't want to make the work.
right?
So what happened to her? She got that. Okay, yeah. Okay. So was that your plan all along?
Today, like,
I
I
just
just
wanted
left.
to help to get her back in line.
She was like, bye bye.
The
Yeah.
conversation we just went through makes it perfectly clear to me at this point. This is impossible to say.
I know. There's sometimes when there are people that literally they're still working. If they leave and it's just you know, fast. Like,
You carefully thought how you could bring this to the surface.
It wasn't the right way, right? It clearly was mishandling conflict.
Okay, that could be a problem. Also, the people who stonewall you and send you into an emotional hijack, and they might sometimes be the people you need to especially be careful with. Like, if someone's trying to stonewall you and you get emotional back at them, potentially could really, yes.
Don't you love those?
Yes. I think this would be an interesting discussion to get into because at some point you have to use some aggressive tactics. But I think also at the same time you might be ready with some emotional intelligence. For example, you might sort of send them into your boss's office and get them feeling like they might get fired, and then be ready to kind of catch them. You see, this is inevitable. Now, how can we do this?
Now it's like
it's like an uphill battle already.
Subject matter experts that report out to them. I'll just come at them from the bottom, right? I'll just win support from your groups and from the people that you say when they do what they're doing, right?
I don't know why she's telling me what to do.
Sounds like good
It
stuff.
does trigger all that.
Yeah. But also,
Thanks for your comments today, too. Those are
It is.
some good,
Yeah.
insightful,
But if that
good insightful points.
when you're at a disadvantage,
Have to pay attention
be better manager and not be
the day they help
therefore, you know, then you're
everybody else hates you. They
see,
understand
this is why you shouldn't have been here. Just, like, you know what I mean? You can't have to. I know that's bad taste where you have to put people on.
Really pay attention. I still have to accomplish what I'm supposed to accomplish.
All we'll have left is the owner.
she's been there.
Yeah. She can't quit.
I'll be interested to hear what you think of my difficult conversation scenarios. Maybe I can make some adjustments based on your feedback. See some real world examples for me.
Don't really care for support publicly questions.
Mine? Oh, I told you.
Yeah. Haven't already gone through that.
It's hard.
Hear that you agree with me. There's either we're in a group discussion or we're going through something and we're walking through it. But if you just walk around and tell people it's a dumb idea without coming through trying to figure out why we're doing it or how it's a better plan.
So you're hired.
They hired some people.
Yeah.
Do they promote you?
All right. Well, look forward to playing some of this out next week. Thank you, dude.
Promote you to, you know,
Sorry, it's an email.
what else?
I guess I missed something.
I don't know. What's not the owner, what's below an
We're going to be
owner?
signing rules for
The
the
director,
workshop.
president, whatever
It'll take place
they
in
have.
2 weeks. And if it's okay with you, we've got you down for So just read through the scenario. Read through your roles. Glance at the other roles. We'll set up Skype. We'll have some people in this room. We'll have some people in other rooms. And we'll go over some techniques about
I mean, I don't know, but whatever they choose to do, they're the owners.
Well, this is designed.
Well, that's it. That's it.
Always a case.
So go through this and that'll come out. Just a fun exercise.
All right.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
So this is again operation.
On camera stuff. Okay, do you want to do an interview? What point did you come in? Alright, so this is on-camera workshop. We will talk about some ways to present your own self on camera. We'll talk about angles. We'll talk a little bit about lighting and how that can make a difference when you're trying to present a professional image over something like a Skype conference call. We'll also talk about ways you can use a camera to your advantage in a press conference to present your company in the best light possible. We'll also talk about if you're doing an interview for, say, your company. You're talking about how great this new product is. How can you deal with difficult questions and how can you present that effectively? And I've designed a number of exercises. We'll have people in different roles. One is a Skype conference call. The other is presenting a complicated graph. The other is doing a press conference. The other is doing an on-camera interview. If you want to do an interview, you would just make up some things that you would be you would make up a topic that you want to be interviewed about. You would write some questions, and I would assign someone to interview you, and we would set it up. We'd set up your interview, we'd have your face on the screen. People would say, "Oh, she kept like looking down," or she didn't talk into the microphone, or whatever. She did this effectively, or didn't do that effectively. Or she didn't use the question answering technique to combat that conflict, to deal with that difficult question as effectively as she could have. That's what we'll do. And your options at this point are to do an interview, or I guess we could stick you on the graph. You could present a graph with Marilyn and Jose. It's just this statistical historical thing, graph that was created 200 years ago about Napoleon's march into Russia, and it was an interesting development in statistics where the person who drew this graph showed some statistical principles that were, by our standards, primitive but interesting. So the challenge is to try to show this over Skype, and it will understand it's really complicated. All right.
That's okay. I'll do the.
Okay. Okay. All right. And I think good. Okay. Excellent. Perfect. So let me think about that. I just told Michelle that she was going to do something else. I think I might assign her to be your interviewer. Let me think for a minute. Just give me 1 second. So interview with Skype. Let's circle back. Don't start preparing your interview. I'll send you an email, or after I think of how I want to do this.
Yeah, I apologize.
Okay.
Get out of work.
Taking care of
I tried
people.
really hard.
People who are in pain.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. I was like walking around, like putting papers down, and they were like, "You speak Spanish," and I was like, "No,
No,
I gotta leave."
no, Espanol. Oh, darn it.
Yeah. That's how
All
it
right.
went.
I understand. All right. Well, I'll email you, or we'll talk next week about the role. I'm glad we got that all in tape.